Hey guys, I'm Phil. I'm a longtime listener, and from my estimation, you guys have some of the most genuine content on this platform.
Thank you.
I just want to circle back to this whole idea of side work and talent stacking, if you guys don't mind. Do you guys have any general tax tips, particularly when you guys have income from, say, a blog or a podcast or things of that nature? Any kind of tax tips that you guys can throw out there real quick? And also, how do you balance full time work, side work, and just life in general? Love to know what you guys are thinking. And yeah, have a good day.
So the tax tips. Well, if you have like a hobby checklist and you decide to turn one of your hobbies into a business, it's a pretty good tax tip. You can kind of fold a lot of your energy and a lot of your income into this business endeavor. And so I've done that with Brad's kind of begrudging graciousness a couple times, and it's given me an outlet to explore my tech geekiness under the confines of a business entity. And it's been actually worked out really well. It was an experiment, but it was able to over time justify that experiment, and it became a real business. But before it was a real business, it was a an endeavor that was covered by the tax code.
Yeah, well, so Phil, first off, thank you for the kind words. I'm glad you appreciate the content. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of the community. And yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest tax tip would come down to basically record keeping. So, Jonathan, I'm a stickler for this, much to your chagrin.
No,
But
no, I
I
am
think
so grateful. I am so grateful for your sticklerliness. It's been amazing. I can see
yeah,
the
I think
pitfalls now, having gotten through a couple years of tax season and seen how, without what you had done, my laissez-faire approach to this would have been a record-keeping nightmare.
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing when you have any type of business is just keeping good records and keeping things separate from your personal accounts. So if you're if you're going to do this, I mean, most people are going to probably open up some type of business entity. But even if you're not, frankly, like I would personally, for me, I would open up another bank account. I would open up a separate credit card. I want nothing commingled. I want it to be very, very obvious where this business lies as part of my personal finances and where my regular personal finances lie. So I would keep a very, very strict separation. And I would say also, you need to keep records of your income and your expenses. And now a lot of people talk about, oh, I'm gonna write it off. I'm gonna write it off as if it were free, or oh, they're doing something, some kind of shenanigans. Like people really aren't. In most cases, I'm sure there are some people doing nefarious things, but for the most part, you're getting a legitimate deduction for a legitimate business expense. Okay, so if you can make the case that the money that you spent on this business or related to this business is a legitimate business expense, then it is deductible as part of that business. Okay. Now, it's hard to make an argument that a trip to Australia is going to help you, is a legitimate business expense for, I don't know, a plumbing business in Richmond.
I mean, if there is a plumbing conference in Australia, and I'm going for my plumbing business. I mean, right? I
Well,
mean,
okay. That may be legitimate. That again is beyond the scope of a of a
I
podcast.
mean,
But
they have some techniques there that if you bring those back into the United States, I'm telling you, it's life changing. It's truly life
I
changing.
can see it. I can see it. But yeah, definitely keep record of all of those expenses. That, and again, it's much easier when it's coming in and out of one bank account and one credit card related to the business. I think that makes it a lot easier. But I know I keep quite literally now. I've moved into the 21st century. I keep PDF backups of this, but I used to until last year. I used to print these out and quite literally number them, and I just had basically an audit proof file like that. I would just plunk this stack of a couple hundred sheets of paper down, numbered order, and okay, go to town. They're all legitimate.
Shortest audit ever. An auditor comes in and like
Yeah.
15 minutes later, they're like, okay, this is there's not. Oh wow.
Seriously, that was always my secret hope, was that I would get audited. But
You really
so
wanted to be audited? Bring it.
bring it on.
Can I add like a couple extra things in here? Because
Yeah,
I'm a
go.
little bit of I'm not a wild card, but I do have Brad as a safety net. So let me just try to say a couple things, and then Brad, you can reel it in as needed here. But I think you mentioned it. I just want to point it out to people. Brad's like, oh gosh,
Yeah, here we go. Here we
No,
go.
the business credit card, actually, you mentioned that, and I want to point out to people the power of that. One is your transaction records all in one thing that you're just using for business. You're not mixing personal and business. And two, for those of you that have businesses with some sort of online presence or advertising presence, you know that we talk about travel rewards and we talk about collecting miles and points. And while this is not something that here at ChooseFI we have done a particularly remarkable job with, I will just say that I have acquaintances with large businesses, with large online marketing budgets. And I know for a fact that they pay for their ad spend to advertise. We're talking about advertising. No, they pay to advertise on, like go on Google, or they pay to advertise on Facebook, or they pay to advertise on whatever that platform of choice is. They pay for these advertisements with their very, their very specific travel rewards card. Brad will come in here. It's probably for a lot of them, it's probably one of the inks, and I'll come back to that in a second, the ink business, but I'll give that back to him in a second. But the point is, imagine this scenario. You have a business that has, and these are big numbers, but this is a very developed business. You have a $10 million a year business. A significant, maybe 20% of that business revenue is being generated by advertising dollars. And so you might have an advertising budget of $50,000 to $100,000 a month. Now, this is outside of small business, but there are business owners that these numbers, they make sense to them, and even smaller versions of it. You're talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars a month to generate new leads for your business. You could just pay for it with your check, or you could put it on to one of these optimized cards and generate a runaway freight train of travel rewards points. And I know that at that level, business owners, they get very excited that, their profits, their P&L statement is one thing, but their travel rewards card, that's another. And that's very exciting. So anyways, just want to point out there, Brad, maybe you could come in with the actual details, because even at the smaller levels of business ownership, these cards can have some pretty significant perks.
Yeah, you're right. The one you're talking about is the Chase Inc. Business Preferred Card. And if people are interested in travel rewards cards or whatnot, they can check out the entire list at ChooseFI.com/cards. So yeah, that's something to consider. But I guess more broadly here, and Jonathan, I absolutely love that. I mean, there are lots of things. Again, it goes back to legitimate business expenses. So, we can talk for hours about this. Clearly, I know I have Ed here in the background telling me about if you have kids and the side hustle makes sense, you can pay them. There are trip expenses. I think he heard about my fictional Australia trip here, and he's talking about potentially deducting costs that are associated with the actual travel, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what some people miss often is cell phone and internet at your house. If that is business related, even potentially your automobile, if you're making legitimate business trips, et cetera. There's some nuance here. So again, this is a podcast. You have to do your own research. You have to consult your tax advisor. But these are things you need to be thinking about. Anything that is legitimately related to the business, there are ways to deduct those expenses. So lots of this information exists on the internet. So Jonathan, let's close it up with the second half of the question here, which is basically how to balance all of this, right? So you have work, you have your side hustle, you have your life, family, friends, interests. Balance can be tough. I mean, you're, I guess, still new to this, right? I say that jokingly, 4 years in, but it still feels new, right? Like, how do you, I guess, conceptualize balance, if you do at all?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that you're going to always be balanced all the time. I think you can have like sprints and tilts towards one things or another, and that's the way it works for me. And it ends up averaging out to some version of balance. It's not always balanced all the time. And so I remember when I started, working on this ChooseFI project with Brad, I was working as a pharmacy manager at a large corporate pharmaceutical pharmacy. Wow, pharmacy really worked its way into sentence in a lot of different instances. I was in pharmacy.
Retail pharmacy, Jonathan. Retail pharmacy.
There we go. You're saying you're a dentist. And
Mercury?
What are
What?
we anti-dentites? All right. And I was working on this project, and the project quickly became kind of a pseudo full-time project, and I was trying to handle a professional career that was pretty demanding in terms of the time. And I was definitely out of balance for a period of time. And so here's kind of like in retrospect. I think I kind of did it right. I think if I had had the expectation that everything always has to be in balance, it probably would not have had the success that we ended up finding it, but what I would say now is like test a bunch of different things at a very small, inexpensive level that allows you just to like see if there's something there. Don't get into something that's taking massive amount of time with no ROI and no thought to the balance in the other areas of your life. Like do small mini experiments, and then if something lands, like give it a little bit more room. Give it a little bit more room. And even for a period of time, and I remember having these conversations with Danny very specifically. I think I wasn't, I didn't know where it was going to go. That kind of whole survivor bias thing. Like when you're in it, you don't actually know what the outcome is going to be. You look back and you say, wow, really glad you did that decision. Wish you had avoided that one. But when you're, on the front end of it, I could tell there was something here. There was a business model here. There was something viable here. It was gaining some traction. And I believe I had a version of the conversation with my wife that basically said, I think I'm going to be out of balance for a bit, right? Probably didn't have the exact word that we're using here, but like, I'm going to be honest with you. I need to do this. I see a path to be able to move out of pharmacy entirely, potentially within a period of like, a year or so. And in the meantime, I'm paying off all of our debt to give us as many options as possible. But I really need to get this to like a point. And here's what I think the success point will look like. And here's how long I think it will take me to get there. And so I just need a little bit of latitude if I'm not always present right now, because this is really important to me. And I think it's going to be really big for us. And my wife, was very gracious and supportive to give me that room. But I do think there was a version of that conversation because I knew I needed her buy-in to some degree. And so I think communication will always buy you more room. It will always extend your ability to do this. So if you're not going to be in balance, but there's other people that are relying on you, try to have a conversation about it, an intellectually honest conversation, and one that gives you some parameters for reeling it back in. Am I perfect? No. Am I in balance now? A lot more than I was. Yeah. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, I go on sprints now, but because I was able to kind of carve up enough bandwidth to explore this and go all in on it, I was able to get rid of something else. And so, you end up spending that time. You're always fighting for it, but there's some real wins to be achieved, and it doesn't have to look like full-on financial independence.
Yeah, I mean this is tough. Balance, to your point, Jonathan, it is not easy, right? There's no perfect life. There's no perfect FI life, right? You think, oh, you have so much time, right? I mean, in my mind's eye, I have a ton of time, but things take time, right? And things spill into maybe proposed time that you're going to do something else. Like it just happens. Life happens, and I think you have to be prepared for that. I think it's more a mindset of, okay, sure, in my perfect world, I would be getting all of these things done that I want to be doing. But you know what? Life happens. And I think as long as you're prepared for that, I think that helps. That goes a long way. Like, I mean, Jonathan, I think if I had to describe one of my favorite things to do in the entire world is reading. And I think as part of my kind of goals for 2021, it was, read X number of books. I forgot what I wrote down, but I've read only 3 books so far this entire calendar year. It's March 16th. And I look back and I say, my initial thought is to beat myself up. But then I say, you know what? I'm still learning a lot of new things. I'm learning Japanese again. I'm spending a lot of time with my family. So I'm not mad at myself, right? Because I understand the reality of the world is, sure, I have a lot of hours, but they get filled. And sometimes balance isn't possible, right? Like we're all doing a lot more at ChooseFI than, maybe I was, or certainly I am. I'm spending more time on ChooseFI now than I ever have. And, that takes time, but this is a passion project. So it's not something that I'm doing begrudgingly, right? And I think obviously, just by definition, just by sheer mathematical definition, something has to give. And that for me has been reading. And even though that's, again, one of my biggest passions in life, but it is what it is. And it's a season. as Jillian Johnsrud, our friend, says, it's a season of life, and you just roll with it, and you follow those passions, and you try to do the best you can to stay in balance. But honestly, Phil, it's just staying in balance mentally and understanding that it can't be perfect all the time. It's not supposed to be. So really great question.
Don't wrap it. Let me throw one more here, and then we'll go to close with this.
Always have to have the last word, buddy. Right?
I knew you were going to say that. It's still worth it. I'm only fighting for this because I'm fighting for it for Phil. It's not even about me. Make time. That's the last thing. Like, we were talking about balance, but there's another place to go with this, and to make time. And the word isn't even a time audit, but rather, like, if you've gotten to the place where you are your own boss, or even you've got a little bit of that, so you're working on a side hustle, like, there is a cadence to your life that you probably don't recognize. Like, and it'd probably be worth it to kind of map it out and realize, where do I have some control and what's just sucking up my time that's adding nothing back. So there's a great book. I think you should check it out. It's Make Time, John Zeratsky. We interviewed him, episode 168. What's the rule here, right? ChooseFI.com/168. Go check it out. And this episode was really meant to highlight why this book was so powerful and how we personally leveraged it. I actually sat down with my wife. Now, this is in the context of full-on entrepreneurship. And this particular page stood out with me then. It stands out with me now as I'm having this conversation. And John Zeratsky's talking about the importance of coming up with these highlights and designing your life, designing your schedule around your priorities. And he's like, now, some of us may have some obstacles. You might have a boss that needs to sign off on it, or, because you're just trying to carve out this little window, and you might need other people to give you permission. And at that moment, I realized I don't need to ask anybody. Nobody. Like, in my own little way, I am the boss of my universe, right? And I still don't give myself permission to make time. And I'm like worried about asking myself to like make time for something that I'm saying is important. That's crazy. So, maybe you do need to ask somebody, or maybe it's just, again, a conversation. My wife and I, upon that epiphany, sat down, and I did it for her first. Like, what's important to you? Tell me what you want. We just kind of put her life, the cadence of her life, which involved, our kids, daycare for our kids, or not even daycare, but preschool for our son, and church activities and meals and just things that kind of filled up the day. And then we looked to see where the gaps were. And if the gap was just getting eaten by social media and TV, then we don't have a time issue. We have a misplaced priorities issue.